Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reflections on Living Well podcast. Happy New Year. 2025 is here. We made it through 2024. What an interesting year that was. And I'm sure the various themes that came up in that year is going to be reflected in the many conversations to come in the future. I started this podcast in 2024, a year ago in January, with the intention to release an episode weekly, exploring the possibility, the potential of living a good life through conversations with people who I thought was thoughtful and intelligent and just wonderful human beings. A lot of those folks I did not know until we had our conversation, and I feel like I've extended my family. I've extended my tribe through this podcast, and it's been awesome. Those of you who've been in since the beginning, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. Many of you have sent me comments and messages, and I'm indeed grateful for that. It was very encouraging, keeping me accountable, with the exception of the last 2 weeks of the year. And I guess the last week of the year and the first week of this year, I did not release an episode. Particular circumstances did not allow me to do so. In the future, I'll try to make sure to let you all know when I don't release an episode. For those of you who are asking me, am I going to continue the podcast? Yes, I am. And my apologies for that. In the future, I'll make sure that you know ahead of time. Or I'll release something, even if it's only for a couple of minutes, to let you know what's going on. And those of you who are new, welcome. Welcome to the podcast. It's a lot of fun. At least I think so. I've really enjoyed these conversations, and I will be saying more about that as time goes on. I just wanted to take a few minutes here before my conversation with Louisa to welcome you back to the podcast in 2025, and also to let you know that I will be having a conversation with someone where they interview me and ask me various questions about who I am and why am I doing this podcast and where am I going with the podcast, what my experience has been. I just think that's a lot better than me doing a solo episode, just looking at myself in the camera and talking. That's just, I don't know. It's just me. I think I do better. I'm better off when someone is asking me questions in a conversational format. So that will be coming, and you'll get a lot more details about where we're going with the show. So if you're enjoying this show and you enjoy these conversations and you see the importance of these types of conversations, please share it with friends, family, or colleagues, or anybody you think that would gain some insight from these types of conversation. Please share it. Community grows with each one of us sharing our experiences. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'm always telling my friends about these wonderful podcasts out there that I am learning from. And so please do share this podcast with others, and let's grow a community of like-minded people open to exploring the potential for that which is good. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Louisa Peck. It was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. All right, take care.
Living well to me is living in a state of happiness that comes from this constant back and forth between me and the world, whether I'm with other people or I'm alone. There's this constant back and forth of, from me, recognition, love, and gratitude. And from the world, all the things that it gives me, I need to recognize.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reflections on Living Well podcast, where we explore perspectives on the good life in the 21st century. I am your host, Broderick. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reflections on Living Well podcast. Today, our guest is Louisa Peck. Raised a staunch atheist, Louisa rejected her 1982 near death experience as a hallucination in order to continue her alcoholic, ego driven lifestyle until the same voice that had been present in her near death experience broke into her consciousness 12 years later to redirect her life's course. Louisa's parents had urged her to excel academically, physically, and socially, but they couldn't pass on what they didn't possess: an appreciation for self honesty and the humility it cultivates. At 34, when she arrived home after driving there blind drunk at 80 miles per hour, not caring what might result, her angel broke into her consciousness with two stern messages. First, this is the last time I can help you. And second, you do know right from wrong. A month later, Louisa attended her first 12-step meeting and today has been 29 years sober. Her book, Die Hard Atheist: From Near-Death Experience Denier to Full-On Woo-Woo, Against My Will, recounts not only her experience on the other side during her cardiac arrest, but also unfolds the afterstory of how increasingly frequent communications with her angel guided her to embrace the sacred work of everyday love, kindness, and compassion as a framework of a joy-filled life. Hi, Louisa.
Hi, Broderick.
That was a very interesting story there that you outlined in the bio, and really looking forward to seeing how all of that has affected your perspective on what living well means or what a good life means.
I'm excited too. I do a lot of YouTubes where I just tell my near death experience. And then at the end of that, people like to hear a little bit about the getting sober, but then I don't get to talk about how I've changed or what it did for me. And so
Mhm.
that's why I'm excited to be talking with you.
Awesome, yeah, because this conversation is, I'm sure all of that will come in, but the most important thing in this conversation is your philosophy on life, your philosophy on a life well lived. What does that look like? And I mean, of course, those experiences are going to impact your perspective on that. So before we jump into that, I know I just read the bio. Can you share briefly a little bit about yourself and when beyond the
Yeah,
context of the bio, how are you feeling about
sure.
yourself today?
Oh, wow. I'm so excited about life, but I'll get to that in a second. I'll start at the beginning. Recently, my sister and I have decided that we're not going to speak ill of our parents anymore.
Mm,
And so this is an important thing because my parents did the best they could and they did a pretty kick-ass job of raising us, but everybody comes out with wounds, and I have always been very quick to point to what my parents didn't teach me. Instead of all that they did, a huge love for academia and culture and art and music and just all kinds of good things. My dad taught me all about nature. He took me hiking, which is the roots of my mountain climbing today. So they gave me so many gifts, but I did grow up. I was born in 1960, and just watch Breakfast at Tiffany's, man. People thought that alcohol was the greatest thing in the world, and they thought if you have any kind of pain, alcohol will fix you. And that's kind of what I was taught, to really work really hard, and then drink hard to kind of relax from that. And the alcohol just gradually got more and more the upper hand. But it's all mixed for me because, like, I can remember, um, like when I got Phi Beta Kappa at Vassar, I remember they had this little cocktail party for the people who had just received it, and there were a bunch of important people from the college there, and I got pretty toasted. And I remember talking to, like, the president of the college or the president of this or that the other thing, and just feeling like, man, I have arrived. And it's that kind of hubris of youth, mixed with the alcohol. I just thought I had the world by the tail. Um, and I didn't know that it's really all about humility. it's really all about gratitude and it's about love. And I had to learn these things, as does everybody, through hard knocks on each one on our own. But
Mhm.
I guess the near death experience opened the door for that, though I did deny it. Even now, when you read some of the woo woo stuff about me, my inner skeptic still kind of goes, "Oh, are you going to do a podcast where you talk about all these weird woo woo things you believe?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am." And, and so I kind of still marvel at the fact that I do get messages from the beyond on the regular now. Got one yesterday, live here because of one. And it's been quite a ride, my life.
Mhm. Awesome. Thanks for sharing all of that. I think that's yeah, let's see how all of that comes back into this conversation as we go. It's a free flowing conversation. And let's see how some of those ideas and I'll try to bring back some of those ideas that you just mentioned back into the conversation as we go along. So here from the beginning, so what does living well mean to you? And then we'll unpack it and see what happens.
Yeah. Living well to me is living in a state of happiness that comes from this constant back and forth between me and the world, whether I'm with other people or I'm alone. There's this constant back and forth of, from me, recognition, love, and gratitude. And from the world, all the things that it gives me, I need to recognize. So, to live, I don't, I for a long time was getting my worth from outside me. For a long time, I was looking to you to tell me that I was worth something. So I like to say, that I was constantly tap dancing, just like, hey, yeah, do you like me now? Do you like me now? And from the moment I opened my eyes in the morning, it's like, back to work, back to proving I'm worth something. And then looking at people. So I'm going to say AA sometimes, and that's kind of a violation, but I just can't help it. That's where I learned everything I learned. In AA, sometimes we talk about treating people like vending machines. So I'm going to be nice to you and I'm going to maybe do something for you or whatever, but you're a vending machine and that's my quarter, or nowadays my credit card, whatever. And I want something back. I want you to introduce me to your friends, tell people I'm cool, do something, give me a job, give me something that's gonna pay me back. And I lived that way, not even knowing I lived that way for so long. I remember in high school just being so mad at the cool people because I was like, you guys are cool, you guys all do things together and I'm excluded. What do I have to do to get in? Well, I didn't really care about any of them.
Mhm.
Didn't I wasn't interested in any of them. Here today, I'm still calling them the popular people because they were individuals, but I didn't look for that. I just looked, where's mine? Where's mine? And I continued that way until I hit my bottom alcoholically. It just, by the end, who I had defined as the cool people. Cool people are people who have what I need and are not giving it to me. And that, everyone defines that in different ways. And mine ended up, I left a position teaching at a community college to move to a rural log cabin in unincorporated Thurston County and get a job as a barista. And then I instantly defined all the other baristas as cooler than me and drank with them. And oh my gosh. And that's when I got to the point where I just wanted to die. I just had enormous crushes on people that would poof me up for a while in this kind of euphoria of having the crush on someone. But that was another thing I didn't have that I was going to get from outside me that was going to complete me. And so at the time when I hit bottom, I really just said, I would like to crash my car and best would be to die. And second best, which I will take, would be to have enough brain damage that no one is going to expect me to perform because I just can't keep up the tap dance. That's where it came from. So what do you want to hear, Broderick? I kind of ran out of gas there.
Oh no, no, it's fine. I think posing that question of what living well means,
I told you what
and
living not well means.
and no, no, I think that's that is an important that is important because to know what not living well is says a lot. It opens up the doors about what it actually is for you. I don't, I think, as we go along in this conversation, I personally don't think it's no one way. I think there's some common themes around what living well means. But it's also important to reflect on, like, okay, then I know what it's not, and I know it is not looking for validation, self-validation from others, looking to the external world for a validation of who I am as a person. That can be problematic. And I think that,
Yes.
you've definitely made that clear that, when we do that, we sacrifice so much of our own selves. We never really get to learn who we are
Yeah.
as a person. We never really get to discover who we really truly are as a person. What are our true desires? Where do those desires really come from? That's deep within me. That's not about appearing a particular way to someone else and then adopting that for ourselves. Boy, that's definitely not a recipe for living a good life.
No.
As you mentioned, because it leads to things like alcoholism or shopism. I don't know, like just buying stuff all the time, whatever thing that we can do to escape ourselves and try to fit within the identification that we perceive that someone else wants us to be, because it comes back
Yeah.
to our
Yeah.
perception of that they want us to be a particular way.
Always does. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
But then,
we're conditioned to be that way. But go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
well, in AA, I learned a lot of things that were counterintuitive to me. And it was a slow process, but I gradually came to realize that I need to be a conduit. And I am a conduit for God, which does not mean to me a religious God at all. It means the nexus of intelligence and love in the universe. And that comes through me to you. And the more I can be a conduit for love, that's what I'm here to do. And that's what recharges me. So I I often say that my job is to leave every person that I interact with a little happier than they were before, just with a sense that somebody saw them for a second or somebody joked with them and we just connected on some level for a second. And I do that everywhere. On the other hand, when I don't even know how to bring in the angel and everything, but I was given a communication from my angel that I needed to leave my home in Seattle, pack up and move, buy a lot of property down in Southern Oregon, and we were going to make a sanctuary for abused animals and for addicts and alcoholics. So I'm hoping to get animals that each has their island of misfit toys. Think of that for animals and help them heal. And then once a year, have a camp out here. I got 5 acres of land just off the Oregon coast. It's beautiful. It's rainforest. I could open the curtains and show you. I got snags. I got moss. I got, these huge trees. And, but it's not just for me. Oh, look at my place I got. Oh boy. It's how can I use this to help others? Because if others had not helped me, in AA and taught me a new way to live, I would be a bar hag somewhere. If I weren't dead, I would be a bar hag somewhere just doing the same old thing and trying to get somebody to listen to me about how bad my life was. And that I am excited for that. And
Mm-hmm.
when I went to do this, it was so much work. My mother died, and my son was leaving for his last term of college, and I had my hip replaced. And when I first was coming out of the anesthetic, I was crystal clear, saw this image above the window to the nurse's station. And my angel put a diagram on there, and there was a circle with me at the center. And there were these spokes coming off it to these smaller circles. And he told me each one of these is a person in your life. And he said, these connections are virtual for the most part. You see more people virtually and stay connected virtually than in person. So don't be afraid. Here's you in your home. And what's that little thing where you turn the dials and it draws on it that kids play with?
Oh, I
What
forgot. I
is
know
that?
what you're talking about. I
Yeah, I
forgot the
can't.
name of
Etch
that
a
thing.
etch a
Yeah,
sketch.
Etch a
That's
Sketch.
it.
Yeah.
So he showed me in my home as a little etch a sketch. It was just going around on itself and around on itself until it was like solid. And he said, this is not useful. We are going to start over and we're going to do something good. So move. And then I came out of the anesthetic and I became really stupid and loopy and couldn't, because I'm back in my brain instead of connected to him. So I started the work, and so many crazy things happened. I can't tell you the long story, but this house was way out of my price range. And then somebody bought it. And I was like, good, because I don't want that house anyway. And then I looked at other houses and realized, no, I did want that house. So then it opened, the price dropped. I came here and I made the owner this ridiculous offer that all came from what I was told to say. And it basically said, tell him that you'll have your house on the market in a month. Tell him your house will sell in 3 weeks, and you will buy this house in cash by the end of that month. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And the realtor's like, do you know what the housing market is right now? And so I started fixing up my house. I didn't have money to pay people to help me. So I paid my friends in IOUs, and friends came and helped me paint. And I left my house at 11 o'clock the night before it had to go on the market. And it went on the market. And then nobody was looking, nobody was buying. It's the worst time ever in the housing market. And then 3 days before I had to have a pending, this couple said, we want your house. And we went through it. And then the day that it had to be a pending, it was. And with each thing, the day before it had to happen, it happened. And here I am with this house now. And so I kind of, at this point, I kind of just do the next indicated thing and have faith that my angel is going to tell me what to do next. And I will know when I see the person, I will know this is the what person that you should talk to, etc. So do you want to hear how I got this really woo-woo view and talk about an angel and stuff? Do you want to hear that now?
Why not? Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's do it. So I have to go back to 1982. Right after that party I told you about with the Phi Beta Kappa thing, when I was just on top of the world, I moved to New York City. And this is the era of Studio 54 and all of that stuff. You got to think new wave is new. It's like Flock of Seagulls and, the Ramones. It's all so cool and new. So I was a little bit of a pre-goth. We didn't have the term goth then. And I asked a friend who was a Coke dealer to come visit me in my apartment in Upper West Side. And he did, and we did a lot of Coke, and then we went to this place called the Peppermint Lounge in Greenwich Village, and I was just about where I would feel like I was cool, that place I could never quite get to, where I was okay and I was enough, and we ran out of Coke. So we pooled our money, and we bought what we thought was a gram of cocaine. We put it on our gums and it numbed them. So we gave the guy our money. We took the cocaine. This is all in the nightclub. And then my friend took a snort, and he was a dealer, and he just said, "We were had. This is not coke." And I was like, well, maybe it's just really bad cocaine. Maybe it's just if I do the whole pile at once, maybe I'll get a little bit high. So I just snorted the whole pile at once. And years later, I would make friends with a lot of coke dealers who were now sober in AA. And they told me we used to cut cocaine with lidocaine because it was much cheaper and it's also numbing. But it sounds like somebody just sold you pure lidocaine. So lidocaine poisoning you can get from just having a little too much lidocaine systemically. People die from it often. And people commit suicide by eating a tube of lidocaine, ointment. I snorted this whole pile. So right away, my brain started shutting down. Everything started shutting down, and I was before you faint, you see a lot of speckles. And do you know what I mean? These kind of red and orange speckles start happening if you're going to faint. And that was happening. I was on my way to the bathroom, and I just thought, "Oh, cool! It's a side effect of cocaine. Maybe I'll get high. Maybe I'll get high." And I didn't. But anyway, it shuts down your autonomic nervous system. So quite the opposite of high. Your heart rate gets suppressed. You don't breathe instinctively. Your blood pressure goes way down, everything. So I was down, I think probably, 20 beats a minute or something like that from my heart. And I was breathing consciously, but it wasn't getting to my brain. No oxygen was getting to my brain. So I became angry, which is a symptom of oxygen starvation. And I said to my date, there's no air down here. We were on the basement floor of a several level, didn't call it disco. I know, what do you call it? I don't know. Anyway,
Disco sounds good.
Disco's okay. All right. And he took me to the bartender. The bartender gave me a glass of water, and I didn't want water. I wanted air, and I didn't understand why nobody else was not starving for air. But I just took the glass and touched it to my lips. And at that moment, on this side, I went into a grand mal seizure and had seizure all over the place, and then had a cardiac arrest that went on for 3 minutes. For me, my experience was as if Popeye had punched me under the chin, and I went shooting up into the sky. And I had a sense of leaving behind Manhattan, and even more, leaving behind that whole fiasco of being Louisa, which was just, I was so happy to have that over with. And I'm going to condense everything, but I shot up into the sky. I did a swan dive into the ocean. I surfaced and then wanted to be at the shore, and then was. And then I saw a big house on a mesa, and I wanted to be there. And then I was at the foot of the mesa, and it was all covered with gross slime, this is all very characteristic of NDEs. And I had to climb through the slime. When I got to the house, I was only this high. I understood that it was, when I passed over the threshold, I understood that all my ancestors had passed there. When I say I was this high, I don't mean I was little. I mean I had lost my body, and I had become a subjective consciousness this far from the ground. So I could feel my ancestors. There's lots of NDE videos of me talking about this, but I said, why can't I look out the picture window the way they all have? I want to. And at that moment, something grabbed me by the sternum, pulled me up over the windowsill and across the ocean, across the sun was setting, and the light was making a path, and I was zooming ahead over that path. And then I had a skeptical thought, which was, wait, this is beautiful sunset, zooming ahead. I can flying like, this is dream stuff. And I thought, is this real? And then a voice answered me, and it answered from within. It's as if it's in your thoughts. It's not words, it's knowings. And the voice said in this strong way, more real than anything back there. And I knew it meant anything from that earth experience. And I was like, you're right. But I was very surprised to be answered because I had done not, when you wonder something, you don't expect somebody to answer. So I got closer and closer to the sun, and then I passed through a filament. I was in the sun and I was in the light. And if you know anything about near death experiences, you know the light is love and it's all pervasive. And I was just saturated with love. And there's more detail I could tell, but at that point, I felt I was being held like an infant by a parent. And the parent suddenly said, you can't stay. You're not done yet. And I didn't know what either of those things meant, but boom, I was in just total darkness and dropping, falling. And that was scary. And then I began to see these little chalk stick figures sort of drawn on the darkness. And one of them filled in and got really close and just said, what is your name? How many fingers? And then I remembered the earth. I remembered being human, and I was so bummed. I was just like, I can't believe I'm back in the meat puppet. I can't believe he thinks we're separate. He wants me to make those noises with code to communicate with him, and I can't do this anymore. It's like if somebody said, Broderick, you're going back to kindergarten. It's going to be awesome. And you can play with blocks and you can draw with crayons, but you can't leave for another. I had a good 60 years ahead of me. And I was just like, I can't do this. But I didn't end up going to the hospital because I gradually figured out that the ambulance we were waiting for was for me. And I told my date I don't want to go. I did not thank the bartender. I was too cool to thank the bartender. I was kind of horrified that he'd been doing CPR on me when he had to be 30. And this is me at 22. Anyway, the next morning when I had to reckon with what was that, and I had a time alone, I shared a apartment with my roommate, but I went in the room and closed the door and I tried to write down what I remembered. And I just had to think, if this is real, this is 1982. Nobody's heard of a near-death experience. Nothing has like that is out there. Even the movie Ghost has not been made yet. So there's nothing in my lexicon to kind of account for this. So either the church people are right and I was in heaven, or it was a hallucination. So I was like, if the church people are right, that means I have to completely rewrite my whole understanding of life. And if I just say it was a brain hallucination, I just have an awesome story. I was dead. What's cooler than that? And I can go on the way I was before. So I completely shut the door on it and had to finish my alcoholism. I had some dark NDEs. I saw a ghost who was in a very unhappy state on a beach in Gloucester when I was alone, also in a very unhappy state. And I wanted to ask him about his vintage rain gear, but he did not answer. He would not look at me. He was staring at the horizon like this as we passed each other. And I got a few steps later and I thought, what a jerk. And I wheeled around, and mine were the only tracks on the beach. And I also had prescience of a death. I knew a death was going to happen. That did happen. And then came the experience that is referenced in my intro, when I went to a party, got so drunk I couldn't stand. People took away my keys, but I got them back and drove home so drunk and crossed this railroad track where the road narrowed and all I saw was a whole bunch of sea of reflectors. And I just kind of shot for the middle. When I got home, I got out of my car and I held onto the door and I said, I am such a badass when I drive drunk. That's me. That's me at 34. What do I know about life? I'm a badass when I drive drunk. And that's when something shot through me. And it said those two things. This is the last time I can help you, meaning that was me that got you across that bridge. That was not you, little one. And two, you do know right from wrong, which means I'd written in my journal, there is no right, there is no wrong. These are social constructs created by a culture to to continue itself. And it's like, you know, I don't want to say herd survival, but it's more like an ant's nest. We all need to follow these rules for the ant's nest to function. And so that was my idea of right and wrong. He said, you do know right from wrong. And I faintly knew that the voice that said this was the same voice that had said more real than anything back there, and was the
Mm-hmm.
same presence that had been holding me like a baby. And he just continued to give me little nudges toward AA, toward meeting the right people, and it was he who showed me the diagram. He's been with me all these years. But once I began to pray, that made his job so much easier. Like when he had to yell that thing to me, I say that our anger and our fear kind of blocks us from spiritual energies. And I had so much ego and anger and fear that he had to be like, this is the last time I can, you know. Whereas now he can just tell me, don't talk to that person, or, you know, something like that, very, very gently. And I hear. So
Nice. Thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, what a story. I think how you started off with, your desire to help others, to support others with this property that you bought, with, coming from where you came from, your ideas from where you came from. And now you have this, like, I just want to serve, I want to take care of others.
mm-hmm,
And to have, to credit your angel, this guidance that you
mm-hmm,
have, that you've been receiving, and being willing to listen to that. I mean, some of us may not have had near-death experiences. We may not have what we call angels, but some people have an inner voice. There's an inner guide.
mm-hmm,
That
mm-hmm,
voice, and it's like you're saying, it's not like someone is talking to you like in verbally necessarily,
mm-hmm,
but it's
mm-hmm,
this inner voice that you can tap into and listen to, and it can be an important piece of the puzzle to living a
mm-hmm,
good life. Someone may
mm-hmm,
say, listen to your inner conscience.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Not to say it's the same thing that you're experiencing, but for those people who don't have that experience that you're having, it
mm-hmm,
can be an analogy is listening to the inner conscious inside of you that
mm-hmm,
compels you from towards the good, like what's right from wrong,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
listening to that voice, like, hey, this is not good for you.
mm-hmm,
I can only try to compel you down a better path, but so many times this is up
mm-hmm,
to you ultimately.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
I think there's an important thing that you're saying there about agency. Even though we may have an inner voice, it's still up to us to choose. It's up to us to choose to say, hey, I need to take advantage of this agency that I have to make choices that are in line with something better than what I'm doing under the circumstances that I'm involved in. Does that make sense? What I'm
Yeah,
saying, I'm trying to
for
pull out what
sure. Free
from your
will is
story.
what I call it. I call it free
Mm-hmm.
will. And I'm in connected now to the near death experience world culture. So I know the things that have experienced personally, but I also speak to a lot of other NDEers, and I believe their experience. But everybody says free will is a big deal. And
Mm-hmm.
when I was telling my story for some group in Texas, one of the questions or whatever, after I talked, this guy said, well, what your angel said is really what Al-Anon's all about. That after you help someone a certain number of times, you become an enabler, and it's up to them. And basically, your angel was cutting you off and saying, okay, fine, bash your head on a tree. I
Mm-hmm.
tried. You're really bent on self-destruction. I guess that's what you need to do. And that's what we have to say to some of the people we love in our life who are addicts. If you just keep helping them and helping them, they're not even there anymore. They're like a little kind of side appendage on this monster of addiction. And you are helping the addiction and not helping them. And choosing choosing is important. You know, a lot of people, many people have guardian angels. And if you get them in the right frame of mind where they feel safe, they will share a story about a time when they got a message. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that it's so taboo in our culture and you sound like a weirdo. Or, you know, I mean, the Christian people don't like you because you're not saying it's Jesus. And and the materialists don't like you because that's all just a bunch of mumbo jumbo from primitive cultures. And but so many people will say, as happened to me, I was at a stoplight, it turned green, and somebody told me don't go. And they didn't go, and then they saw why. In my case, a car came racing through the intersection 100 miles an hour, and the same thing happens to other people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and many people can tell about these close calls because that's what sticks in our minds. That was so, when it's lights green, you go. And unless something says don't go, that's a very black and white. I was told to do something and I did it and it worked. But the same things happen with our life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You can say, I don't know, connect to this person, don't connect to this person, take this job, don't take this job. There's all of these choices. One NDEer said he was shown a Plinko board. Do you know the Plinko board where it goes this way and then forks
Mm-mm.
again and again and again? It's on some game.
Oh
Some
yeah, I
game.
know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Well, he was shown his life as a Plinko board and he could choose any, but all the choices that he made added up to his life. And
Mm-hmm.
and all the choices that I have made have brought me to this one. It's not about fate, but fewer people will acknowledge being steered in decisions, bigger decisions than to go or not go at a stoplight by their angel. But they
Mm-hmm.
are.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think again, we can play a language game and call it whatever we want. You know, of course,
Mm-hmm.
a scientist not going to call it. They're like, oh, there's just something I was compelled to do this, and just because
Mm-hmm.
of their, oh, I won't say just a scientist, but a materialist who believes that the
Mm-hmm.
world is just, you know,
Mm-hmm.
primarily material and everything else is epiphenomenal. It kind of comes off of
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
You whatever you want to have that view, that's fine. I'm not going to argue with that. And I think, but even them, they can at least admit that there's some inner voice. There's something that compelled them to do something. They might be like, well, my nervous system picked up on something that I was beneath my awareness, and I'm like, whatever, however you want to name it, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Mm-hmm.
think what the important thing is being able to listen to those inner voices, to being able to
Mm-hmm.
listen to that. There's a conscious that we have, a consciousness within us that is compelling us to act in ways that's in line with our well-being. If you want to reduce it to your nervous system picking up something
Mm-hmm.
ahead of time, okay, whatever. I'm not gonna argue with you. Or if
Mm-hmm.
you're a Christian
Mm-hmm.
and you want to say it was Jesus, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna sit up here and argue with you about that. But the important
Mm-hmm.
thing is what you're saying is, and I think it's important that contributes to living a good life, is learning how to listen to those inner
Mm-hmm.
voices, learning
Mm-hmm.
how to listen to the aspects of ourselves. When I say self, not just a self reduced to, say, for instance, Broderick, just reduced to me and my skin, but
Mm-hmm.
that's the self that extends beyond that. And I think that when we're able to listen deeply to that, that there are messages if we tune in. And you're
Mm-hmm.
completely right. If you sit down and you talk with people and they're not in their circle of people who have the what they feel like they have to adapt a particular view, they'll talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I know staunch scientists who are say it, they just word it in a different way, but they talk
Mm-hmm.
about how there's something inside of them that is hard to describe that's
Mm-hmm.
compelling them to do certain things. And I
Mm-hmm.
think practically everybody, if they really reflect on it, has had moments like you're saying where I probably shouldn't go at this green light. I've had it. Most people I know have had something like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, but some told me not to do that. Or I got asked to go to this thing with some of my friends and I don't know. I don't know what it was, but some said don't go. Or I just said
Mm-hmm.
like,
Yeah,
nah, you
yeah.
know what?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm not going to go. And turns out that something crazy happened with their friends when they went out. And I'm like, yeah, there's something more to us and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
than our rational minds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
than what we've been told, be it
Mm-hmm.
through a particular religious tradition or the scientific tradition. There's something more, and
Mm-hmm.
learning how to 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 listen to that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then from that, we don't have to. You didn't have to stop at the green light. Excuse me. You didn't have to stop at the green light,
Mm-hmm.
but you made a choice, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that there's something else that's going on there. Why would you make that choice to say, you know what, I'm not. I'm going to listen to this. I'm not going to go. Which is saying that there is a greater voice. There's something else that is interested in our well-being. There's
Mm-hmm.
some aspect of ourselves that is huge
Mm-hmm.
and that is interested in our well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't, for me, again, different people are gonna look at it in different ways. They're gonna look at it as an other being or whatever it may be. I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter. The important thing is we are being compelled, and if we really tune into that,
Mm-hmm.
it's compelling us in a direction that is in line with what is good for us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I think that requires learning how to listen to that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
those of you who've had near death experiences, it's almost you've been forced
Mm-hmm.
to listen to that. You've been forced to like see it clearly. When those who haven't, there it's really difficult for them to hear and listen to that thing that is compelling us towards uh, our goodness or
Mm-hmm.
our experience of that which is good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And I'm going to take it another step. There are things you can do to make it easier to hear. There
exactly.
are things you can do. Now, I am very big on this aura or sheath around us that is either made of anger and fear, or can be made more permeable so that the spirits can reach us more easily. And when you live in love and gratitude, I have been I have learned to just connect to the goodness in everything. It's very easy for me to, connect to the goodness in whoopsie, not my deck, but beyond my deck, there's this rainforest of trees and so on. And the goodness in nature is one thing, but also, I mean, there was somebody in a factory somewhere that made, I don't know, this harmonica. And so anything, a lot of times I'll feel like the things around me are made by this horrible, gigantic corporate materialist capitalist machine. And I feel so guilty for ordering from Amazon, or I've only bought stuff from Walmart twice, but boy, do I feel guilty about it. And but whatever. And I've started thinking about, no, everything comes from the earth, right? It comes from our natural resources. The energy all comes from the sun. And at some level, people made these things. If I'm listening to music, I'll think about, someone wrote this music wanting to make it the best they could. Somebody played these instruments wanting to make it come out the best they could for me. And I just get to listen to it. And if you're eating food, you can think about like who came up with this idea to, put chili peppers in something, like who was or that people have passed down. Sometimes I'll just think about mayonnaise. Like, who the hell discovered that you could emulsify eggs and make mayonnaise? Thank you. This is such a cool thing. And nothing that I do in my life is solo.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about my life is just inextricably intertwined with millions and billions of other lives that come together to give me this experience. And the more I can recognize them along the way and thank them, the better. I don't even like. I had the weirdest experience. It was right out where I showed you the woman who lived here before me, who died. She liked Peter Rabbit type stuff, which I really don't like. So there's this big old Peter Rabbit thing on the wall there. I don't know what all it was. Anyway, when I took it off, I had never in my life seen so many cocoons, webs, like, you know, larva things. I don't know what it was, but it was just, the wall was thick with this stuff. And old me is still there. So like skeptic me goes, ew, I have to clean that up. And a new part of me that's growing more and more says, wow, little insects, you make stuff with your body. The only thing I can make is spit and waste. That's it. And tears, I guess. Earwax. I don't know. I can't build a home from my body the way you do. I can't build a cradle for my baby the way you make a little nest for, like, I just saw these as uh creations, little things that they had made over the years. And I was like, you guys are so crafty. And then I took the broom and swept it all off. But like, it's just a different attitude, right? It's a different way. I can pick up spiders with my hands now. And there's just a love of all creatures, even if you have to, like, I had chickens at my other house and we had a lot of rats. And so I had to put out traps and I'd feel terrible, but you just say, I'm so sorry, little rat. I'm so sorry I had to do this. So I
Yeah.
don't know, as you perceive, so you experience. And the more you perceive with love, the more you experience with love, and the more filled with it you become. And then I will take it a woo-woo step further and say the easier it is for the good spirits to communicate with you. I saw the
Hmm.
ghost who was so angry and upset looking at the horizon that wasn't there because something he wanted, a ship that he wanted to come in, was not there. And I
Hmm.
was angry and upset. So the same thing, the dark spirits are around too, and they are trying to get other people to sign on to the, yeah, I'm pissed too, and life sucks, and I'm angry, because they can feed off that. I'm
Hmm.
going to take it a little more woo woo than you went. And I mean, spirits are all around us. My sister was a little bit ahead of me in encouraging me. I'm going to start, she's already doing it, to make an altar for our ancestors, to put little tokens of our ancestors on it and recognize them, and, uh, you know, make offerings for them and so on. I'm going to do that. But more specifically, my ex-boyfriend, we were both alcoholics, sober together, and then he relapsed and I left him, and then I stupidly came back while he was still drinking, and he cheated and betrayed me and lied, and I left him again in 2015 for good. But I loved him. I just didn't love alcoholism. And he was doing in 2014, 15, the things that I had been doing before I got sober, lying to people, chasing after a good time, etc. So I received a call from his sister a few years ago saying, now that he's retired, he's wasting away from alcoholism. I called him, told him, sweetheart, you're dying. And he went to treatment, and I went to see him in treatment. And he had on the moccasins I'd given him, and he was skinny as a rail, but he was still him. And he said, I'm going to make amends to you. I'm going to do it right. And he couldn't look at me. He was on the spectrum, so he couldn't look at me when he said that. He kind of was saying it almost to himself. But anyway, he died from alcoholism summer before last, quite suddenly. Alcoholism, if he was just drinking IPAs, it can eat away your digestive system, and he got some kind of rupture somewhere in his GI tract and fainted in his little home where he lived alone and bled out to death. And the first time he came to me, I was listening to my iPhones and I playlist, and he the song meant something to me. Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive, has a meaning in my life. So it came on and I thought, oh yeah, this is that song that has that meaning in my life. Here comes my ex and he's like, no, it's me. I survived death. And so I'm like, okay, honey, sweet, calm down. It's okay. And he tells me, I saw my body. I couldn't get back into it. I didn't know what the heck was going on. I'm like, I know, honey, I know. You need to just go to the light. It's okay. So the next song he played me was Share If I Could Turn Back Time, which I didn't even know was on my playlist, but he sang it all to me. If you know that song, I don't know why I did the things I did. I don't know why I said the things I did. If I could turn back time, you'd still be with me. And then he played Blondie's song, Dreamin'. Dreamin' is free. And I was kind of like, I was running and I was like, is this him or is this just the playlist? And then there he is again. And he said, I want to contact you during your dreams, but I need your permission. And it's like almost like you need to sign a release form and say, you have my permission to come to me in my dreams. So he came to me in my dreams for 2 weeks solid. I had not dreamed about him for a long time, but he was showing me different aspects of the relationship that I had not been aware of from his perspective. What it's like to be with somebody who has more education than you do. What it's like to be with somebody who's like socially able when you are on the spectrum and can't communicate. I got to be in his shoes and feel his feelings in those dreams. And then I took his ashes to the top of a mountain that we used to go to all the time. And when I was scattering them, I asked this woman to help me. And it turned out that she was in the same climbing club that he and I had met in. And so she filmed me, and I knew I was going to do this. I didn't know anybody else ever did this. I guess it's not quite as weird as I thought, but I swallowed some of his ashes, remembering how much I loved him when I loved him. And when I was driving home, he made my Google Maps go nuts. I'm driving down the highway heading for Seattle. I've got a mammogram at 4:00. Google Maps says, take a left at the roundabout. I'm like, why would I take a left? That's where Gerard used to live. Sorry, is that his name? But anyway, why would I want to go there? I'm going this way. And I thought, well, there must be a traffic jam. There must be a reason. So I take a left at the roundabout, and there I am in Lake Stevens. And it's just got these little 25-mile-an-hour roads. And Google Maps tells me, drive along the lake shore. I'm like, what? I was programmed to go to Seattle. So I started talking to him. And I said, I got to be at this appointment at 4:00, and I'm already going to be 10 minutes late just getting to Seattle. And he started making the little icon for my car jump all over the screen. Just jump, 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 jump. Like every 5 seconds, it would be in a new place. And the Google Maps thing would say, take a left at, turn right at, merge it. And it was just trying to tell me how to get back to the road that I was on, because I had gone back to the highway at that point. I took some screenshots of it, and you can see that it looks like I went all over the place. And so my skeptical mind is saying there must be a glitch with Google Maps. There must be a glitch with my phone. But I also knew it was him. And I said to him, you're going to make me, I said, I don't know the way. I can't even tell the way. And he said, you know the way. And anyway, somehow he got me to my appointment at 4 on the dot. There happened to be a lot of green lights. There happened to be a parking space right in front of where I needed to be. And just yesterday, I was driving, and I got off the freeway, and I was on 4 lanes in Longview, and there was no cars. And when you get off the freeway, it's hard to slow down. You're accustomed to going 60, 70 miles an hour. So the speed limit was 35, and it was him. He never liked cops. And he said, somebody's tracking you right now. They're to your left. Stay under 40. So I was like, oh, okay. I don't see anybody, but okay. And I was looking at my left to side streets to see if there was somebody there, and nothing. But after a minute, the state patrol guy had been in my blind spot that whole time, and he pulled ahead and took off. So for me, I'm not a medium. I don't do this stuff. I don't give readings. Maybe when I get old, I will. I don't have time right now. But this awareness of the spirit world around me And that, I mean, in his case, I think most people can't hear him. I can hear him. So I'm the one he talks to. I've also talked to near-death experiencers who've talked about, finding themselves in the hospital, standing next to their dead body and addressing people directly, and no one can hear them.
Mm.
So your loved ones who have died, they're talking to you all the time, trying to get in through your protective aura. And most of the time they can't. But when you cultivate that love, it becomes much easier to reach them. So I don't know, Broderick, do you think I'm nuts? What do you think?
We're all nuts. To some capacity, we're all nuts. I mean, it's different than my personal experience, and I think that, but I love it. I love hearing you talk about this because I think it's great for the audience to hear that you're having this experience. You have this worldview. You're able to communicate with spirits from your perspective, and I think that's in by doing this and listening to this, it's leading you and guiding you to live a beautiful life, to live a life that's dedicated to love, that's trying to do good in the world, gratitude, these qualities, things that I think are important aspects of the good life. And I think that how we get there, um, and seeing that there are different perspectives, different ways by which people get to a place where things like love and compassion and gratitude is really important and is an important part of being a human being. And I can see your compassion for your ex-partner. I can see this in the beginning when I say introduce yourself. You're like, me and my sister, we want to not focus so much on the negative of our parents and not complain about our parents. I'm realizing that now maybe I'm putting words in your mouth here, that you realizing that there was more to them than all of the stuff that we didn't like about what they were doing. And how you just said, how can I value my ancestors? How can I listen to their voices? How can I listen to the voices of those who've gone before us? How can I look at the world through their lenses? And we may not have agreed about the lives that they've lived, but how can I empathize with them and have compassion for them? And then how do I now, and a way for me to do that, I think it, like what you're saying, is by being more loving, being more compassionate, having more gratitude, those things, and then taking our agency, using our agency, our free will, as you say, to be that in the world, to be an example of love and goodness in the world, to say, hey, I want to buy this property. I want to create a sanctuary for animals and other non-human animals. I want to create a sanctuary for people who've had challenges in their lives. I think that that speaks to the good life. And listeners, if you're like, wow, Louisa's way more woo-woo than me, I'm like, that's not the point.
Can I plug my
Louisa
book?
might look at, for you. And so
Can
for some people, I'm like, for listeners, for listeners, I'm like, Louisa might feel the same way about you if you share your life. So I might feel the same way about you in different ways. So I think I love this because, I think that perspective and what you're sharing is valuable. And I think people need to hear it. I think it's because some of us are lost or are afraid to listen to our own inner voices. And I think what you're doing and what your message today has been, that, yeah, it's okay to listen to all of that.
And
There
what your
is something
podcast
going
is
on there.
about
I
is
can
all of
test.
these different ways of living well kind of coming
Mm-hmm.
together. And so what you're sort of saying is, why silence one? Just because it's
Yeah.
embarrassing for you to admit that you are believing in spirits, right? Bring all the
Yeah.
tools together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So share your book, please. But yeah, will you say you
Okay.
want to?
So, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So is it backwards for you?
No, actually, no, it's just fine.
Okay.
It's a
All right.
Die Hard
So
Atheist. Yeah.
diehard atheist from NDE denier to full on woo woo against my will. So I am a woo woo against my will. So this story, I told you I discounted the near death experience. Then I tried to push away the ghost. Then I tried to push away the prescience. Then I kept, when the weird thing would be happening, I would be like, I understand. I am hearing from that presence that I now call my angel, that now has a name, Ignacio. But I would know when it was happening that was real. But I also knew that when I returned to my regular life, it was going to seem ridiculous. The book is about this long process that I had to go through, where every time a weird thing would happen, I would know that there was a spirit world. And then when I would kind of go back to my acculturated self and back to consensual reality and everything I'd been raised with, I was like, I don't know what that was, but it had to be something that could be explained, and I'm not going to think about it. And so in the book, I do that again and again and again. I have a weird paranormal experience. I try to either dismiss it or explain it away, until finally there was one that was just so wild and weird that I can tell you if you want, the one that pushed me over the edge. Well,
Well,
you can read the book if you want to hear it, or I can tell it to you. It's up to you. But eventually I had to reach a point of acceptance and just to synthesize these two parts of myself, my skeptic and the part of me that knows it's real. And the skeptic doesn't die. The skeptic never dies. It's always saying, I can't believe you're saying this. I can't believe. Because it's like the right answer is what the media in general, what the, popular culture in general says is reality. That's what you need to be signing up for. And if you're off track, then I'm embarrassed for you.
no, I really, so this is important. And I think I love it. And I think that a big take home to the world is more than what we think it is and what we've been
Uh-huh.
enculturated, what we've been conditioned to see that
Uh-huh.
it is. And I think, I may not have had a near death experience like that. I've had spiritual experiences that some people might think is woo woo and all that. I'm like, I definitely got the woo woo in me for sure. That may be different than
Uh-huh.
other people. But I
Uh-huh.
think that we are all different. We all have capacities to commune with with reality in different ways. I'm glad that you're sharing your story with the world. I'm glad you came on the podcast to share it as well, because I think that it's okay to accept our gifts, our capacities, and you have a sensitivity. And was it the near death experience that caused that sensitivity? It doesn't matter. You
It
have a
was.
sensitivity. And the important thing is that you're very sensitive in the language that you use to describe it. That might not work for some people who listen to the podcast. I'm cool with it, but it doesn't matter, folks. That because the reason why I'm saying is that sometimes we get lost and we get hung up and we get stuck in our narrow way of seeing things. I don't think I don't see how a person listening to this podcast, for instance, can listen to your story and just completely disregard you. A person who's trying, who's doing your best to do good in the world. Why would you disregard that person? Because they have a different way of looking at the world than you do. And their way of looking at the world is just as valid as yours. Their experience is valid. You can't take away somebody else's experience. So don't get caught up on all of that. Listen to the beauty within the story. Listen to the grace. The message is, hey, listen deeply to yourself. Don't allow yourself to get to be bogged down into a conditioned self that's been imposed on you by the external world. Don't allow yourself to get, because that's going to trap you into various forms of addiction, be it a substance addiction or some other type, I don't know, TV addiction or shopping or whatever it could be. Because you're trying to satisfy something that for somebody else and not for yourself. And your message too that I took is also be loving, be compassionate, have gratitude, try to do good in the world, try to resolve past conflicts and try to understand deeply what a person has gone through so that you can be more loving and more compassionate. I take that from what you're saying. And and I love the quote unquote woo woo that comes along with it. I actually don't even think it's woo woo. I just think it's normal. It's just natural.
Uh-huh.
And I think that that's my personal take. And I'm sure people who listen to this are like, Roger, you too woo woo for me. Okay, whatever. But I think that I think it's within the realm of nature, the possibilities of nature. Nature is not what I want it to be and how I fix it and put it into some box. It's more than that. And for me, your experience, and I take your word for it. Your experience, for me, suggests that the world is a lot more than what I can confine it to be. And I think that listening to your story and your suggestions about how to live, um, I mean, you're doing it indirectly, but it's it communicates that, oh, there are so many different ways of looking at this thing. There's so many ways of experiencing reality, and if I allow myself to open myself up to it, maybe I will have a way of communicating with reality that Louisa might feel like it's just, all right, that's really woo woo, that's really out there. But that's just like, that's you, your body, your experience, your sensitivity. So you get where I'm going with this is that,
I do.
with this podcast, what I'm trying to convey is that there are different perspectives in the world. We have to learn how to listen to each other, listen to people with different perspectives, and try to find where is the common theme in it all. Your story can be shared with a person that's a pure materialist, scientific materialism, and yet you two can have a common interest in the good. That's what we need. That's, I feel like, what we need to do is learn how to listen to each other and try to see what our common interest is in the good, and and realize like, oh, we have a lot in common. Actually, I may have a slightly different experience than you, but hey, we have a lot in common. To me, a pure scientific materialist is that's woo woo as hell too.
Mhm.
It really is, and people are starting to recognize that. Okay, that's very woo woo. Actually, it's
Mhm.
a different type of woo woo,
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
think that you can have a conversation with all kinds of people and learning how to find what we have in common in terms of the good, and then we can make a better world as a result of that. I think through
Mhm.
those types of conversations
Mhm.
versus just like, I'm not going to listen to you because you have a different worldview than I do. No, let's listen to each other. You might find that you have a lot in common with that person as it relates to how to make the world a more beautiful place. I don't know. That's just my little spiel, I suppose. But we're at the end here. I wanted to. Do you have any final words? Can you sum up what your view of how all of this has impacted your view on what living well means or a good life? What is a take-home message?
Well, you know, in a we're taught that love and service is our code, and so to love and to serve even when I don't want to,
Mm,
it almost always becomes rewarding. There's been so many times when some woman has asked me to sponsor her, and I will feel like, oh man, this woman's a hot mess. I cannot take this into my life. And then Ignacio, my angel, will say, do you remember when you were a hot mess? She just needs love. So I sometimes have to just jump over that little hurdle, or I'll meet a person and I'll have an impulse to say a joke or something to them, and I'll feel like, oh, that person's very different from me and they won't like my joke and I shouldn't try it. And again, I'll make myself jump over that hurdle and say the joke or say the compliment or say whatever it is. And then I'm almost always surprised by, the results that I get. So I feel that I can't just sit around and say, oh, I'm going to be loving, or I'm going to be this or that, because, a lot of the time I'm full of fear right now. I'm always full of fear, right?
mm.
It doesn't ever go away. What am I doing down here in this new place in Oregon in the middle of a freaking rainforest? What? you know? But you just have to say, yeah, that's like static on the radio, and I can still hear the radio show. I can still hear the voice, which is the one thing saying to me, Louisa, you have not gone to an AA meeting here in this new place, and you've been here 2 weeks. What up with that? You got to go. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. I have to go. So I'm going to tell you, Broderick, I'm going this week. It's a commitment. Now I have to do it, because another thing I was taught was, when you give your word, keep your word. So I think it's that I would say for the good life, it is recognizing our foibles, our weaknesses, our fears, and all these things, and loving those too, but still say, I'm going to go beyond that. Even if it's just a little bit, I'm going to go beyond that toward the good a little bit today. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you so much. This has been great. It's been fun, and I love hearing your story. It's different. I'm glad that you came on this podcast to share with this audience that your story, and open them up to that possibility. You're doing
You're
good
going to have
things
to
in the
change your
world.
description now, and you're going to have to put in and some woo woo, right?
All right, I know. I've had a scientific materialist here, so that's woo woo. I mean, trust me, that thing
Okay.
is so woo woo, and
Now
then I
you've
don't
got
people
the
know it.
opposite
I got
extreme.
the
So
opposite extreme, yeah, and I want more too. I'm gonna have some other folk coming on here to talking something. I'm like, because I
awesome.
think it's important too. I think again, I want to stress that listeners that it's important to hear each other and listen to each other and our
Mhm.
differences, and we can always learn and gain some insights from another voice, even if we use a different language, even if we may not agree with them. That's not the point. The point is to listen and gain the insight. And there are messengers everywhere. We're all
Mhm.
messengers in some capacity. And if we're open ourselves to hearing what another person has to say, we might capture that message and apply it in our lives in a way um, uh, that's going to support a life well lived. So this has been
Mhm.
great, and thank you so much again. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for doing this podcast. It's really a gift to the world.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I hope this conversation has inspired you to reflect on your own views of the good life. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more inspiring and thought-provoking conversations, please follow, write a review, and rate us on your favorite podcast app. If you are tuning in on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support is very much appreciated.